Rain scattered against the thin kitchen windows, weaving intricate rivers over the yellowed panes. That night, my mother laid out roast chicken, mashed potatoes, and the honey rolls she'd learned decades ago from her grandmother. Every Tuesday was family dinner, a sacred contract in our two-bedroom apartment in Woodside, Queens. My brother Anthony sprawled with elbows out. My sister Clara meticulously turned her fork. My father's Sunday newspaper remained stubbornly folded beside his plate. The table glowed with old light, and the city's muffled horns sounded distant outside. I was 20, fresh from a mediocre semester at Hunter College, when I said it out loud. The air felt sharp as broken ice. "I'm applying to the city's film program next term. I want to make documentaries," I told them. The words sounded thinner than I'd rehearsed in my head. Anthony snorted, a nasal eruption over his rolls. "What, you want to be the next Spielberg but sadder?" Dad barely glanced up. "Documentaries about what, Julian? Pigeons on the subway?" Clara smiled, tight-lipped, her voice almost sweet. "You can't even finish a 3-page paper on time." My mother's fingers poked at her napkin. I saw her try to shield her expression. "You know, honey, it's a hard path. We have rent here, bills. Maybe do something with business, or computers. You're always good with those." I felt the words pooling in my chest, thick as syrup. I swallowed. "I want to try. If I don't now, it'll be too late." My pulse thudded in my wrists. Every syllable felt like a dare. Dad sighed, more bone-tired than angry. "You have a good head, Julian. I just don't want to see you wasting years filming bums in the park for no pay. Anyone can point a camera. You know Mickey's son went back to HVAC tech school." Laughter, muted but enough to stain the moment. I'd expected concern, maybe confusion, but the scorn was more biting. That peculiar family sadism that wounds worse when delivered with love. Shame pricked my skin hotter than any oven. I broke a roll, my mind already scheming an escape. That was my last family dinner for a long time. By September, I was renting a slivering room down in Sunset Park from a retired violin teacher who collected teapots. The walls in her apartment were lined with dust and porcelain. She let me stay cheap, provided I didn't make noise after 9. Nights, the city outside her curtains pulsed neon and relentless. Hunter's documentary program was run by a fierce woman named Naima. She wore scarves and had hell for eyes. In her class, we learned the difference between recording truth and chasing spectacle. Each week, I held my imposter syndrome tightly, afraid the other students would sense I'd never held a boom mic before. They talked about festivals, about parents who worked in media. I fumbled through the basics. The city, though, gave me subjects. The Vietnamese bakeries, the protest marches clanging down Fifth Avenue, the corner barbershop where men discussed their latest scams. I worked 2 jobs between classes, making lattes uptown and stocking shelves at a 24-hour bodega. Hearing "Dale, Julian," whispered whenever I flagged. Sleep became optional. My parents called, short and perfunctory. "How's school?" "Fine." "Making any movies yet?" "Trying." I filmed a man named Gerald who rebuilt bicycles from city trash. I shot women at a halfway house, sharing their stories behind drawn blinds. I filmed and then destroyed half the footage out of shame. Nothing seemed good enough. When I submitted my first rough cut for class critique, Naima watched 5 silent minutes, then paused. Even in the dark, I felt the room's expectations. "It's honest, but so raw it bleeds," she said. "Don't hide, show us what you're scared to show." I willed myself to keep going. My family still gathered every Tuesday. I went home once that winter, bored by Anthony's jokes, exhausted by Mom's gentle humiliation. "My Julian always had a wild imagination when he was little," Dad asked. "Met any famous people?" As if that was the metric. Clara, now a Wall Street analyst, texted under the table. At the end, my mother pressed $20 into my palm and whispered, "Just in case." By spring, I heard snatches about Anthony's promotion, Clara's new apartment, Dad's cholesterol. My own progress felt invisible. Late-night edits, bloodshot screenings, the momentary joy of getting a shot just right. Rejection letters came from every major film grant. My bank account tottered. My landlord posted eviction reminders, always with a brittle smile. The shame built in secret, gnawing at each small failure. Some mornings I woke and simply sat in the shower, letting water run over me as I weighed the math of next month's rent. More than once, I stared down the subway tracks and wondered if anyone would care if I simply quit. The only courage I could summon was to keep showing up. Another coffee shift, another edit session, rolling tapes despite the banging of my own doubts. Yet every so often something would happen. An interviewee would cry mid-sentence, trust me enough to unfold their sadness, or a shot would catch twilight reflecting in a window, pure and unrepeatable. These moments didn't pay bills, but they held me together. 2 years bled into 5. I stopped counting student debt after the third comma. After graduation, I got a night job copy editing funeral home obituaries for a local paper and filmed during my days. I caught the stories others missed: the landlord who fed strays, the boxer with a stutter who taught girls to hold their ground. One August, I met Maribel on a Chinatown subway. She wore tired sneakers and headphones so massive they looked stolen from a spaceship. I filmed her performing guerrilla poetry on subway platforms, dropping perfect lines between train screeches. She let me follow her for weeks, documenting her life in snippets: her father's pharmacy, her brother's prison calls, the colliding languages of their cramped kitchen. Through her, I learned patience. I cut and recut her story late into hot, airless nights, hands trembling from caffeine and anxiety. Nobody in my family knew her name, they didn't ask. My parents invited me for holidays, offering real job leads from Dad's union friends, holding out hope that I'd someday admit defeat and start over. At their table, I always felt unfinished, as if my real work resided in the city's shadows. It took another 3 years, 70 job rejections, a dozen soul-destroying temp contracts, before Maribel's documentary landed at a small festival on the Lower East Side. We won an audience award, then a critic from the Village Voice called it remarkably tender. My phone buzzed with 2 calls, one from my mother, who left a voice message filled with pride and confusion, and one from a producer in LA. "Are you the one who did Lines Underground?" I was. He offered me a spot on a docuseries about immigrant cooks in New York. My first real paycheck arrived. I paid off 2 credit cards, then bought my mother a perfume she'd loved but insisted was wasteful. She cried quietly when I handed her the glass bottle, her hands trembling. Within a year, my name appeared at the end of 3 more films, each about people the city overlooked. The docuseries netted a nomination for a regional Emmy. At a screening, I watched Maribel glare at the credits, pretending not to smile as her name flashed on the screen. My landlord watched on local PBS and left a note taped to my door. "You did it." The first time Anthony emailed me was abrupt. "Saw you on NY1, food story, not bad." Clara texted me, "Congrats on the show, you really stuck with it, huh?" The shame that had haunted me felt different in the light. It dulled to a bruise, still tender but healing. And then, after 8 years gone, my father called. "You coming for dinner? Mom wants you here. Anthony's bringing his girlfriend." He almost hid his hope under old sarcasm, almost. I went home the next Tuesday. The kitchen was the same except for new curtains. My mother's rolls still flaked in my fingers. Dad, shrunken but alert, passed me a beer. Anthony, thicker in the jaw, said, "So when you're famous, are you putting us in your movies?" Half a jest, half a plea. I looked at them, these people who'd punctured my hope out of fear, who had shrunk my dreams to fit their anxieties, but who were impossibly still my people. "I might," I said. Everyone laughed, easier than before. Later that spring, a national broadcaster picked up Lines Underground and requested a family and community showing Uptown, a small theater on 72nd Street, free tickets for all. Naima texted me, "Proud of you. Bring your family, they should know." I handed Mom a printed invite. She eyed it nervously. "You sure you want us all there?" "Yeah, it's important." The community turnout surprised me. Anthony brought friends from his gym. My dad wore a jacket and fidgeted all night. Clara arrived late, in heels, eyeing everyone as if she might broker a deal. Prayers from my childhood priest drifted through the pre-show crowd. I watched faces, the ones that had rolled their eyes at my camera, the local deli owner who'd called me Spielberg, all here in high school gym suits and suit jackets. The film flickered to life. Maribel's voice, bravado and ache wove through the dark. Silences thickened. A neighbor's stifled sob punctuated the subway noise. By the time the credits rolled, nobody moved. Then applause, some of it from ancient men who'd never shown anything but skepticism. I glanced at my father. His eyes glistened, unhidden, reflecting the old kitchen. My mother wiped her face, no attempt at hiding. Even Anthony, forever armored in mockery, shook my hand at the aisle, pulling me into a rough hug. All the dismissals, the cheap scorn, a decade's worth, slid away as tangible, actual proof glowed on the screen. These were not just stories. Maribel got a book deal that year. The city started a fund for arts programs in her old neighborhood. I was not just someone with a camera. I had conjured something out of all that doubted energy, all that shame. The afterparty swelled inside the stuffy theatre lobby. Anthony made jokes about my brother, the famous director, but now it felt different. Clara confessed she cried. My father said softly, "You did yourself proud, Julian." "You really did." Outside, it rained as we left. The city peeled open with sirens and headlights. My mother pressed the umbrella over my head, even though I didn't need it. For the first time, I didn't feel like a disappointment, just someone who'd come home. We packed into my father's old Camry, the heater rattling, voices overlapping. I listened to their old stories, the warmth of family wrapping me, real and imperfect. I glimpsed the young man I had been, sitting at the scarred dinner table, full of terror and hope. The shame that once threatened to drown me was now the bedrock I stood on. Their laughter spilled out into the wet city night, bright and ordinary, and I drove us home, ready for tomorrow.